You cannot deny, though, that starting in book 4, there is literal, like, sacrifice your own arm to raise a wizard back to life magic. Like, it gets into, like, blood sacrifice imagery and magic, and it's still in there. I'm gonna cut you off at the pass here and say, I understand those are evil wizards doing evil things.
Okay.
I'm gonna cut you off. That's an obvious one. Should our children still be reading that, though? You're basically saying that witchcraft scripturally is not the same thing as what a story like Harry Potter uses as its storytelling device.
Absolutely.
But
okay,
I want to push back a little bit.
Yeah.
There are still some visuals to talk about hissing or whispering.
Mm-hmm.
Harry Potter literally has the ability to talk to snakes. Harry Potter, like there are things in these books that are, yes, maybe I'll grant you the idea that he is not literally using them in the way that the prophets of Baal were using them, but he is still mixing together potions in order to obtain certain medicinal or even, I mean, like you have your what's it called? The lucky potion, the Lucius
Felix Felicis.
Felix Felicis, yes. I was gonna say Lucky Luciano. That's a like a runner, I think, like a track star. Anyway, so he still does these things. He still invokes power that is not from God. Like the story of Harry Potter does not talk about God's power, and he is not using his wand to call upon, the power of the Lord to Expelliarmus or to insert spell here. He is invoking power of some kind that is not explicitly or really implicitly even from God. So I'm wondering, like, yes, even if somebody were to say, sure, he's not saying, Baal, give me power, he's still using power, using some kind of supernatural power, not something us muggles can do,
right,
to affect the world, to hurt people sometimes when he thinks it's justified, to affect his luck. Like these kind of, not spiritual, I would say luck is, but like it's this kind of general, like, ethereal idea. So I would say, could we still say it's justified that these things are not of God that these characters are doing?
If you wanted to look at the book series from 100 yards away through like blurry binoculars,
which
maybe,
that's how I read everything. So thank you.
But a huge, just as is important, not just as important, that's not true, in a similar way to as it's important to know the context within Scripture, it's important to know the context within the actual fiction that we're writing in.
Okay.
First and foremost, it's fiction. We know it's fiction. We are aware of the fictional nature of this.
How did they do it in the movie then?
Well,
I watched them.
The movies are not fiction.
Okay.
That one,
those are documentaries.
Yeah. And those you were saying
they were coincidentally the same story as the books.
Right. Yeah, but no. So this is fiction, and first and foremost, when we just recognize this is all coming from somebody's brain, it becomes a lot easier to be like, okay, maybe this isn't big of a deal. J.K. Rowling is not a secret deity. She is not,
as far as we know.
As far as we know, yeah, she is not, some sort of evil entity trying to draw people to her to worship her or praise her any more than your typical famous person.
Okay.
Any more than your typical public figure.
All right. We put enough caveats in there.
So that's the quick and easy one is just, look, man, it's fiction. We know it's fiction. This didn't happen. We all know that this is pretend. It doesn't apply to anything real. It's like science fiction. Like we don't need to be worried about the virus or whatever it is, the weird black line in Project Hail Mary. Whatever it is that's going.
No spoilers, man. I've never watched or read it.
Oh.
There's a black line in it, I guess.
Really? You didn't know? You okay.
No, I don't know anything about it.
Fine. Whatever disaster coming in whatever disaster movie,
insert
whatever
thing
else.
here.
Like
Matt Damon's poop potatoes.
These might be real things that could happen, but that movie's fiction. And we don't need to worry about that. Yes, there are other powers and entities that are real that can impact the world around us. But Harry Potter is fiction. None of that is real.
Okay.
None of that is anything that like involves the real world. But what's even more so applying to this is when we look at these types of books, whether it's Harry Potter or Percy Jackson or, whatever else.
Sure.
How are these people receiving these powers? So in Harry Potter, it is education. It's knowledge.
I mean, it's based kind of genetic luck, it seems like.
So it is a natural gift that is given to them.
Or natural
ability. And then
ability.
they have to go to school for it.
Yeah, it's true.
So if you were to say child A is naturally more geared toward math than child B, and then they go to school and child A studies math more heartily, and now they have a power that child B does not. They have an ability that child B does not. Now, we consider a mundane ability, mathematics, because we all know mathematics.
And you can learn math without being naturally what's the term? I don't remember. I'm not even going to try.
Without natural proclivities?
Yeah, without a natural, like, there are people whose brain works better at figuring out math problems than mine.
Right.
I don't like math very much. I could still learn how to do it.
Right. And then, so for that matter, then, athletics. There are some things that when somebody is born, they will not be able to do something that when somebody else is born will be able to do.
To a certain degree.
Yeah. Like just natural abilities
True.
that people have. But again, because these things are mundane, we don't we don't think of them as like, that's witchcraft. That's evil. Like
Usain Bolt.
Yeah.
He's a wizard.
He runs 30 miles per hour. He's clearly a wizard, But that's a great example. Is Usain Bolt is this dude has done stuff. I remember reading an article saying he should not be able to do this. When we have studied the human body and the physics of the human body and the biology of the human body, he should not be able to run this fast. But he is. And we say that's incredible. His natural athleticism, his work, and his study is literally breaking what we thought was real. We don't say, you're a witch, not
anymore.
Right?
we as humans said that to a pretty recent time in life.
But when we consider, like in Harry Potter, we see that this is a natural ability that some people have that others don't. For you to be good at this ability, you do need to go to school for it, to learn about it, to become better at it. This is something that's essentially within you. Or like in the Dresden Files is another good example.
Yeah.
This is a natural, real thing that just exists in the world. Only certain people know how to tap into it, though. It was like if only certain people knew about electricity.
Yeah.
And so they could light lamps and charge batteries, and other people didn't understand how they were doing that. But it is a natural force in the world, just like anything else is a natural force in the world. Harry talks a lot about the equations he has to do, the study he has to do, the math that he has to do, the physics. He talks about physics a lot in this because it is a real natural force in the world.
It is an application of natural things.
These people are not calling other deities.
That's true. The Harry Potter, to me, it's almost a standout now when I think about it or read through them again. They don't ever talk about what this is. It's just a thing. It's just a thing that exists. They never talk about like a source of, like, it seems people don't have a magic gauge. Like they don't have they don't run out of MP, essentially. They don't, it's like if you are physically exhausted, you'll have a harder time. Sure. Yeah. But like they don't ever really talk about that. I'd almost be more interested in watching the new show if that was something they kind of got into, like added to the kind of mythology of it.
The midichlorians of it.
Just call it midichlorians. Just go for it, man. Like, bring George onto this one. That would make it better. I'd watch it if George Lucas were involved. They don't really talk about the source. I guess the issue then is purely about the image of what's happening.
Yes.
If you don't like the idea of like talking to snakes and things like that, where there's an evil snake in the first, 3 chapters of the Bible.
Right.
And then I read Harry Potter, and in the first or second chapter of Harry Potter, Harry, they go to the zoo and he talks to a snake and without even trying lets the snake free.
Yeah.
And it attacks, or at least scares the good kid, quote unquote. I mean, he's not portrayed as a good kid, but attacks the non-wizard kid. Like, the imagery is still there of, I would say, even framing the person who is able to do this image-wise evil stuff as the good guy.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if I feel like that's the issue here is, yes, I'll admit, sure, it's not the same as a prophet of Baal calling down a spell from a whatever. It's fictional, I get that. But it is still portraying a wizard who is doing even unintentional bad things, so to speak, hurting his aunt. I'm becoming the Ministry of Magic, aren't I? It's a real problem. Anyway, so does Harry, though, so that's fine.
No, Hermione.
He becomes an Auror.
Hermione becomes
She's the whatever, but he's still a wizard
prime,
cop who works for the Ministry of Magic.
Yeah.
She becomes the head, the Minister of Magic.
Yeah, the Minister of Magic.
But, man, this isn't a Harry Potter rant episode. I'm going to stop. It is still portraying kid who can do magical things, including talking to snakes, as the hero.
So, this is where semantics comes in. If we said that Harry, for some reason, had a natural inclination for gadgets, and he built a gadget, and he didn't quite know what it does, and he hit a button, and the glass disappeared, and the snake, slithered away, we would be just fine.
It would not be a blip. There'd be 4,000 children's books that have that exact.
It's Tomorrowland. It's what's the one with Mr. What's-It in it?
Mr. X from Resident Evil. That's the Mister that came to my mind.
Dang it!
It's
the one that was just referenced in the Stranger Things season.
I haven't watched it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
There are a ton of science fiction children's novels that have to do with this children being special because they are smart.
They're smart. They're smart kids.
They know how to do put things together.
We're getting into the realm of magi.
Yeah,
they're magi. They're wizards because they're so smart.
It's Batman versus Superman, where they're both going to do super heroic things that are beyond the ability of a normal human. They are going to do things that you cannot do in the real world. But one writer says it's because he's an alien with powers from another planet. The other writer says it's because he's smart
because he's
rich.
Yeah, and he can afford to buy this cool car.
And
that
so
makes no sense.
These are things that it all comes down to just the word that you put on it, and you put the word magic on it instead of the word science on it, and now all of a sudden people are freaking out. And that's fear of a word, not fear of a thing.
Interesting.
And that's a problem.
Now, what if I'll grant you that now. You cannot deny, though, that starting in book 4, there is literal, sacrifice your own arm to raise a wizard back to life magic. It gets into, blood sacrifice imagery and magic, and it's still in there. I'm gonna cut you off at the pass here and say, I understand those are evil wizards doing evil things.
Okay.
I'm going to cut you off. That's an obvious one. Should our children still be reading that, though? Should this kind of imagery be something that our children are allowed to read?
Oh, this is something that's...
Because they're explicitly made for 15-year-olds at that point.
There are a lot of books that are on this today on how we have coddled our current generations.
Well, there's been people saying that for... literally ever. Every generation says the next generation is a bunch of pansies.
But we are experiencing a lot of the outcome of that, in that things like birth rates are the lowest they've ever been in history because people are scared to go out and meet other people. And, depression and loneliness are the highest they've ever been in history because people are afraid to go out and socialize. Things like, ways that we have sort of protected people to a point of a problem. Anyway, that's a rant.
That's his whole rant now is that you kids need to participation trophies are the devil.
My point being, there needs to be safe places that we can experience these things.
Okay.
There needs to be safe places that we can experience evil and fear. And sure, we need to be discerning on when we experience these things. At some point, you're going to want to say, my kids don't need to watch Freddy Krueger. You know, absolutely not. I'm going to be wise and discerning with
Until they're at least 8.
Yeah. On when something like that is okay for them. At some point, I had to say for myself, never. I get nightmares. That's a me thing. I'm not saying it's evil or bad to watch horror. In fact, we've talked about how horror can be good. But we need to be discerning with this. But the reality is, it's so important to give people safe places to experience these types of things so that if they are scared, that's something they can process without having to actually deal with the thing right in front of their face. This is why Dungeons & Dragons is so good and so important. It's all the same arguments that I've given for Harry Potter of, look, the magic in it is fiction. In fact, it's math. It's not even fiction. It's math. And
it's problem-solving tool.
Exactly. But it is a safe place to experience interpersonal communication, interpersonal reactions, and then to be able to say, you know what, we're done, let's walk away. For example, in a recent session with the middle schoolers that I have a campaign for, there was a villain there was a hurricane and was trying to hold on, and one of my players had the opportunity to save him. And he said, no. And I said, okay, I'm going to roll for the villain to hold on. And I rolled a natural 1. And so in the story, the villain got pulled out, flew away, hit a tree, and went limp and just kept flying away. And we moved on, and I looked back to the kid, and he's wiping tears out of his eyes.
Oh, no.
You know?
Yeah.
And I said, whoa, hold on. Do we want to change that? Do you want to go back and do something different? And he's like, yeah, I think I do. And so we did. We retconned it.
Sure.
And he went and he saved him. And it's a good, safe place to have these types of struggles and these types of conflict where we can say, okay, wait.
Ethical dilemmas.
Yeah, exactly. Where we can say, wait, hold on. I didn't like that. That didn't go well. That didn't go the way I wanted it to. So let's do something different. Let's think about this differently. Let's change the way that we're thinking about this.
And you're saying reading Harry Potter can be that?
Yes. Where when we see something evil that we look at and we know that is evil, that is bad, but then we see that heroism and bravery saves the day, self-sacrifice, and sometimes running away saves the day. That's a safe place to experience that. When you read it in a book, and then you can close the book and put it down and walk away and then come back to the book later or whatever else. These are safe places to experience these interpersonal conflicts or these real world conflicts instead of being in the real world and seeing somebody genuinely doing evil or wanting to do evil and thinking to yourself, I have no context for this. I have no idea what I should do, what I want to do. All I know is I'm scared. I'm scared and this is bad and it feels bad and I have no idea what to do next. So yes, I think it is good with discernment for our kids to experience things like this because it's a safe place to experience it.
Yeah, I think that would be even further. I'm very excited for my son to get to the point where he's able to read, books, read, period. He's getting there, but to be able to read and for me to just like be able to read alongside with him and be like, hey, what are you reading? I'm going to read it too. And then I can, hey, man, what'd you think of insert whatever happened?
Yeah.
Like, just have those discussions and not try not to frame it as that was bad. So what do you think? But just like, hey, what are your thoughts? To have a discussion about something. And yeah, no, I think that makes sense. All right. You've convinced me. I have to subscribe to HBO now and I'll have to watch the show. That's a joke. You don't have to do that.
No,
you don't have to do that. If you have heard these arguments and still say, you know what, I still don't want my kids to read it. Okay. Like, there's also not a imperative to engage in things.
Yeah.
I think, like we're talking about, though, our motivations are important. Our motivations and why we are making the choices we are making should be examined and should be taken into account. Okay, I thought this thing at one point. Okay, I see why that's not right. But I'm actually going to say my son should read this book instead. Or, just not this. Whatever. I get that. We get to make our own personal choices. But our goal today, and I hope we've been successful, because I think you did a pretty good job there, Steve, of convincing or at least explaining,
Yeah.
was just to, hey, the things we might have thought at one point or might have been taught in the church or experienced might not necessarily be correct.
Yeah.
And to take into the different perspectives.
Can I get two things?
Please.
Real quick
We need to wrap up pretty quickly.
Yeah. But okay, so two quick things that I want to make sure we touch on here.
Yeah.
Is there was also this idea, like, what about the secret evil, satanic cults out there or whatever else that are trying to lure people
all
in
those ones that exist.
and whatever. Like, yeah, I mean, we want to giggle at it, but there are people who genuinely believe
Sure,
these things,
sure.
right? That there
I suppose
is
so, yes.
Some sort of secret cabal that is trying to bring people into Satanism. The Satanic Panic was all bunk. It came at a time when serial killers were hip, which was terrifying. We're talking about like Son of Sam and the Zodiac Killer and Charles Manson.
Yeah.
This is all in this era when these murderous people are doing and saying awful and horrific things and getting all kinds of news and all kinds of press for it.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden people started looking around and thinking, who else is an evil, horrific person hiding in the shadows that could, take me away? Insert into this a book called Michelle Remembers. And Michelle Remembers was a book about a girl who was in therapy and she uncovered some memories
What regressive hypnotherapy? I think
something
is
of
the
that
term.
nature. Yeah. And she suddenly remembers that when she was a child, her parents were part of a satanic cult and they abused her. And so her therapist, who then became her husband, talk about
Yeah, well,
weird
hold on.
stuff after that. Yeah. Publishes this book, Michelle Remembers, all about this. And it explodes. It becomes huge, all about, oh my gosh, there are clearly secret satanic cults out there that are trying to get us. That's where Charles Manson and whomever else, that's how all this happens.
Yeah.
Whatever. Later on, we find out Michelle Remembers was completely
false. There's a
All
whole
made up.
X-Files episode about it.
Dungeons and Dragons gets brought into this because of a kid who was neurodivergent but very, very smart, goes to college when he's 16 years old, doesn't really connect with anybody but plays D&D with his friends. One day has kind of a mental breakdown and just disappears. And they go to try to find him, and all they can really find out is that he was the weird kid that played D&D, and they would go down into like the underground tunnels of their school to play D&D because it was cool down there. Like,
Sure.
haha, we're
Cool
playing
atmosphere
D&D
to-
underground,
yeah.
whatever. And so they literally just made up this stuff about
Looking for explanations
Yeah.
for irrational things or unexplained things.
about D&D, sucking him into this world of fantasy that made him want to do crazy things and whatever. Again, made up. In fact, in over 10,000 reports of ritual satanic abuse, zero evidence was found
Big
for
old
any of
goose
it.
egg on that one.
Zero evidence has been found for it. So Satanic Panic altogether turns out to just be like this cultural moment of panic on nothing, on lies. Really, the lesson of the Satanic Panic that we should be taking is be very careful with your media intake. Be very careful with what media you're believing because you are being lied to sometimes.
Yeah.
And so the second thing I want to bring up is, and the most important, what I kind of want to cap off on all of this is Romans 14. Romans 14 is a really important chapter in all of this. Contextually, we got to remember Rome was very, very secular. Not a lot of Hebrew people in Rome at the time. And so when Christianity came through there, a lot of them didn't have context for the Old Testament and Old Testament Judaism. And so a lot of them were just like, hey, my friends are having this party for Zeus, serving a bunch of good food. They're going to sacrifice the food to Zeus, and then we're all going to eat it. I'm going to go and, be with them, be the gospel to them, be Christ to them. I'm going to go. And a lot of other believers were like, you can't do that.
Can't eat food sacrificed
You
to
can't
a
eat food
false god.
sacrificed to Zeus. Like you can't do that, man. And they get in a big argument about this. And Paul ends up writing and he says, look, he calls them the weak and the strong. So I'm going to use Paul's language. There are the strong who see something that is not forbidden in Scripture. And maybe some people question it, but it's not forbidden in Scripture. And they can partake of that. And as long as they're not betraying their conscience, that's fine.
Just meat.
It's just meat. They're eating meat and hanging out with people. That's great. There are the weak. And the weak in some situations will see that and say, I would feel awful doing that. I cannot do that. They would betray their conscience to do that. They should not do that then.
Can't separate the idea of sacrifice and
right
meat. Yeah.
So then that person should not eat the meat.
Yeah.
Don't do that because you're betraying your conscience at that point. Strong, don't force the weak to do this with you. Don't tempt them in with you. Weak, don't condemn the strong for what they're doing. And super duper important verse toward the end of Romans 14, Paul says, do not destroy the work of God for the sake of food. In all of this, I want to say, do not destroy the work of God for the sake of fictional witchcraft. There are incredible ministries out there like Save Point, like Love Thy Nerd, that are out there trying to reach people because of their love for Harry Potter or the Dresden Files or whatever else, and use that as a tool to bring them into the gospel. We can't look at ministries like that and say, oh, you're using evil to bring people in. That is bad. Don't do that. Don't destroy the work of God for the sake of fictional witchcraft. If this is something that you can't support, okay, man, we get it. Don't don't do it. Don't betray your convictions. Do not do that. It is not okay for you to read Harry Potter or whatever else. But don't condemn us for trying to reach people using that.
Sure, yeah.